All right. We are on to episode 2 of our Unfuck Your Body live series. I'm a little early, so I'm going to wait for Arnika to chime in here. Hopefully I do a much better job this time of posting the slides. All right. If you have not joined us last week, we did Unfuck Your Ankle. And we are going to move up the body as we get through every joint, trying to give you ways to assess whether your body is indeed fucked up, how to then unfuck it up, and have not fuck it up again, all right? So I realize there's a lot of F-bombs in here. It is not safe for work. Put on your headphones. I'm waiting for Arnika to join me. She is a chiropractor. She's amazing. I love her. We vibe real well on how to treat the body and what we need to do in order to maximize our time in the gym and to train for longevity, right? Because it's not about what you can do now. It's about what you can do when you're 60, when you're 70, when you're 80. It's about being able to pick up your kids and toss them over your head and do all the things. So we're going to make sure that all of that is chiming in any second now. Here she comes. All right. Hi.
Hello.
Hello. All right, so I just filled everybody in how last week we went through unfucking your ankle, and this week we are going through the knee. Hopefully you guys can see that. That just took me completely out of the picture. Huh? All right, I'm not going to do those slides because it just doesn't work. I'm not sure about, I don't even know how to not do that. All right. Let's go ahead and talk about the knee, okay? So we are going to talk about, is it fucked up? Okay, so how do we assess the, ooh, that looks lovely. Where are you right now? That looks amazing.
I'm by the beach.
Okay. I'm freezing in my studio right now. All right, let's get to it. Okay, is it fucked up? How do we know if the knee is indeed fucked up? What do? We have to assess it, right? So what is one of the main ways that we can assess the knee?
Heel to butt.
Heel to butt. All right. Can you bend it? Right? First and foremost, can you bend your knee? Right? That is what it does. Right? The knee has to get to full flexion. Right? Full flexion, full extension. It is a pillar of strength in your body. If you can't extend it, that's fucked up. And if you can't bend it, that's fucked up
too. Right.
so let's bend that knee. Okay. So, and then one of the biggest things that I tell people, especially about the knee, and I want to dive into this before we even go down the road of is your knee fucked up, is first and foremost, that knee is hardy, dude. That knee can take a lot, right? It's capable of so much. So most of the time, unless there was blunt force trauma and you literally got hit with the baseball bat in your knee, or you planted your foot and rotated and blew out that ACL, or got in a car accident and slammed into the dashboard, it's probably not the knee. Most overuse injuries that tend to creep into the knee with training, and that's generally what we're talking about here, is your time in the gym and wow, now my knees are starting to hurt, or I'm 40 years old and my knees are hurting me. It's probably not your knee, right? What could it possibly be, Arnika? Tell the world.
We got to look below and above. So we're looking at the ankle or the hip. If those aren't moving and our knee's supposed to be stable, it's going to grab that from somewhere. So then our knee gets fucked up.
Right, exactly, right? Like the ankles. So the ankles are the shock absorber of the body, right? And we talked about the ankle last week. If your ankle's fucked up, everything else is going to be fucked up, right? And so if your knee is messed up, let's look at the ankle, especially if it's an overuse type thing, right? Are you pounding the pavement and running and jumping and doing all these things? And if your ankle is not absorbing the amount of shock that it should, or doesn't have the strength, it's going to travel up and land
on that knee,
right? On that knee. And then if your positioning is all messed up and you're doing all these squats and you're doing all this stuff, and again, running, jumping, lunging, whatever, and your hip is not strong enough to tolerate that, it's going down, right? It's going down to the knee. So we definitely need to look above and below, make sure that test the knee out. Is it indeed the knee? If you have full flexion and full extension in the knee with minimal pain, zero pain, it's probably not your knee. Because if you get up and walk around and squat and jump and stuff and your knee hurts, but if you can bend and straighten it without pain, it's probably not coming from your knee, right?
Right.
And I'm gonna say, even if something shows up on the scan, because there's plenty of people that are walking around with old
fucked up
tears,
knees.
with fucked up old meniscal tears, arthritic knees and everything, and they are pain-free. So even if you do go to the doctor and something comes up on the scan, I'm gonna tell you, if it's not blunt force trauma and it's just something that's come on little by little, you can get out of pain and still have that meniscal tear, that arthritic knee, stuff like that, right? Like, there are plenty of people that have pain-free knees because there's other stuff coming into play. All right, so how do we then unfuck it up, Arnika? What do we do? What do we do?
So I want to talk about the fact that we need to get away from the stigma that our knees going over our toes is a bad thing. Our knees have so much range of motion, and it doesn't have to stay in this typical 90-90. So one thing is being able to train it and actually move it further than your foot.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, having the range of motion in the ankle allows the knee to do what it needs to do in order to put the rest of your body in proper position, right? And so, yes, knees over toes, knees over toes, knees over toes. Work into that range of motion gently, right? Like, I'm not asking you to just go balls to the wall and drive those knees forward, right? Like, that's going to fuck something else up, right? So
Right.
You definitely want to lean into it, but you want to access that range, right? Knees over toes is a good thing. Flat foot, heel down, drive that knee forward. If you're having back pain in your squats, it might be because your knee's not coming forward enough and somebody told you to really push those hips back and sit into those heels, and now your back's all fucked up, right? So yes, accessing that knee over toes and then actually strengthening that position, right? Like, let's get there, right? How do you unfuck something up? You mobilize it and you strengthen it, right? So let's get to the position where our knees can get over our toes and then like strengthen and add load and stress that position to the point of strength so that we can then get better, right? Okay, great. And then what about positioning? Like, I mean, everything you do, everything you do is about positions, right? So are we in a good position if our hip is in one spot, our ankle's in another, and then our knees
no knee buckle
diving somewhere else? Like,
I see that with people doing videos or squatting on Instagram, and I'm like, man, that's not okay. But that's just because people don't realize that our inner thigh, those adductors, those muscles, most of the time are too tight or just overworked. And that's how our knees begin to buckle in. So we got to start doing something with the inside of our thighs and not thinking that everyone who has a knee problem has an IT band syndrome. So we got to do something with the inner thighs and not just the outer thighs.
Yep, inner thigh. Mobilize the inner thigh, strengthen the outer thigh, right? Like let's strengthen that glute so that it can then stabilize the knee into a position. But again, if you can't mobilize and get into a position, then there's no point. Then you can't strengthen that position, right? So if you can't, and the inner thigh, I mean, when do we ever stretch that in normal day-to-day life?
No one does. Normally after the groin pull comes, then we stretch the inner thigh.
Exactly. And then it's a little too late because that groin pull is vicious, right? So you see athletes all the time, or the weekend warriors, right? They go out and they play ultimate frisbee, or they play that softball game and they pull their groin. And it's like, well, unless you strengthen it and mobilize it, that groin is just going forward and back. You're never pulling your foot away from your body, and so, or moving laterally, and that's a huge problem in CrossFit, that we don't do lateral movement. And so then that inner thigh just gets tight and weak. So that's another thing that you can do, is strengthen all around the knee, right? All around the hip, all around the knee, full circle. It's not just front and back. Okay, what about that VMO? What does the VMO do? What is that VMO? How important is that little teardrop?
I love TKEs, okay? No one knows about that VMO. And when I have someone do that, they're like, I don't feel anything. I'm like, oh, you're about to, because this muscle does nothing.
TKEs are all up in my programming. So if you don't know, TKEs are terminal knee extensions, right? And you can do those with a band, or you can do them just doing quad sets. But basically, the vastus medialis oblique, the VMO, the teardrop muscle that everybody wants in that quad, that sexy teardrop muscle.
Yeah.
That is responsible for terminal knee extension. It really only works in the last 15, 30 degrees of extension, but it's hugely important with patellar tracking, and that is your kneecap. Your kneecap sits in a little groove in your knee, and if it does not track properly, that little fucker fucks you up, right? Like it is so crunchy, and it causes all this little noise and crunchiness and bad stuff in your knee. So strengthening that VMO is just hugely important. You can Google these things, find out how to strengthen that VMO, right? VMO is huge, right? What about the Sartorius, right? Like, how important is the Sartorius?
Super important, super important. It's one of the muscles that crosses our hip and our knee. So most of the time coming across that adductor and hitting those three muscles, it's not worked or it's not stretched, and people really don't know how to work it.
Right. Yeah, so the Sartorius is the longest muscle in the body, and it's the cross your leg muscle. So basically it's responsible for doing this, right? Every single one of those actions, right? So
right. And everyone sits like this.
Easiest way to talk about it, right? How do you cross your leg? Oh, that's your Sartorius. But I love the fact that it goes from your hip all the way down to your knee and attaches right here on Gertie's tubercle. So sometimes when you have some pain and pressure on the inside of your knee, a lot of people think, oh, maybe it's medial meniscus. It might not be. It could just be a pissed off Sartorius, right? And you use it a lot. So there's ways to stretch it, ways to stretch it, ways to mobilize it, and ways to make sure that it's healthy enough to take you through all the things that you want to do, right? You can't forget, it's not just quads and hamstrings and IT band. There's a whole lot of other shit going on, right? So it's know your anatomy, research it, and then assess your body. Figure out what it is that needs to be worked. Not all of these little rehab techniques that you see on Instagram and YouTube are for you. You have to figure out which ones are for you. What's going on in there? Okay. Knee sleeves. You talked about knee sleeves being a good tool.
It is a good tool. I think the issue that we have is people start to become dependent on them. So they're like, oh, my knee hurts, I need to put the sleeve on. And I have, my own views about sleeves, because our body, our own muscles should be able to stabilize our knee. But we use these tools, and then we become dependent on it. And they say, you've been lifting for 20 years with this same knee brace, and those muscles around your knee are not supporting your knee. So making sure that we use the tool when we're supposed to. And honestly, I prefer using KT tape, kinesiology tape, because it still allows you to have more mobility. It still allows you to have stability. You can still move throughout its full range of motion. I don't understand braces and you can't move that muscle through the full range of motion. You're limiting it again.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm a big fan for using knee sleeves in order to get you to where you want to be. But then you gotta peel that shit away. Like, you gotta wean yourself off. Like, if you're planning on and you're registered for a half marathon, right? And you've registered and you gotta go and you gotta do it. Do what you need to do in order to get it done. But if you are in training and you are trying to strengthen your knee, please don't wear that knee sleeve, right? Take that off. If you are trying to access some deep knee flexion and you need that knee sleeve to create a little bit of joint space, sure, right? But with the goal of then taking that knee sleeve off, right? Like, you want to use it as a tool for treatment, but with the end goal of not using it for not being dependent on it. Absolutely. I can't stand those things long term. And I can't stand when people just put them on because they're like, oh, well, they warm up my knee. I'm like, bitch, that's what you got blood flow for.
Right, but you can warm your own knee up too. Right. We gotta talk about the infamous, the scary word arthritis. I hear so much, oh, I got arthritis in my knees. And I'm telling people that, yeah, we got arthritis and it feels painful, but that's because we're not moving it. So it's pretty common that we get arthritis in our knees, but that's because we need to get up and move them and have some mobility and move it through that full range like you were talking about.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, arthritis is not a death sentence, right? Arthritis is letting you know, hey, you are aging. Shocker.
Right? We're all going to degenerate. We're just trying to slow it down. Exactly.
We're shocked. We're aging. I'm not. Everybody else is. But yes, arthritis does not mean that you don't use the joint. Arthritis is letting you know, hey, we need to pick up, the muscles need to pick up the slack so that our bones and our cartilage and our inert structures are not taking so much weight. Literally, weight, right? And so, again, talking about that patellar tracking, right? If your kneecap is not tracking appropriately, then you are going to start getting some arthritis, some chondromalacia, some stuff going on, right? But guess what? The muscles allow the kneecap to track properly, right? The muscles control and brace and control everything going on in that joint, and they create joint space because of that tension in the body, right? So if you do not have strong muscles, yes, your bones are just sitting on each other and grinding. You need that musculature to protect and strengthen, right? So yes, arthritis. I can't stand when people just lean back on that and say, oh, I'm doomed, I'm gonna have pain forever. You're not. Don't be lazy. Oil that shit up. You're the Tin Man, right? You're getting older. You gotta lubricate. You gotta move. You have to attack it. I have that here in my notes, right? The only way you unfuck up your body is by attacking the problem, right? Not by just being like, well, I guess I'm fucked, right? Even like meniscal tears, I can't stand it. Keep going to the doctor. Go ahead, keep going to the doctor. They're gonna find something wrong. That doesn't mean you can't fix it, right? Even if they say you need surgery, try everything else first. Because they're in the business of making money off of you getting surgery. Try everything else first, right? They don't know all the other techniques that you can do. They don't specialize in that. They don't learn that, right? Other practitioners do. Chiropractors, sports medicine doctors, physiotherapists, right? Like, go to them. Personal trainers. I'm an athletic trainer. Sports medicine degree. I know more than that doctor you went to. I guarantee you. Okay.
I know that I've worked with a lot of clients.
Right.
I know that I've worked with a lot of clients with meniscal issues, you know, having knee problems, either going up and down the stairs. That at times that this meniscus is just not sitting in the right place. Nothing is torn, nothing is pushed. It's just like, we got to get it moving. So there's certain soft tissue movements, certain mobilizations of the knee, just to get it, everything sitting back how it's supposed to. And then also, like you said, supporting it with the muscles, because we do have muscles that come into that space as well.
Right. Yep, absolutely. I mean, it could be a tight muscle that's shifting the joint out of position, and it's causing some friction on that meniscus, and it feels like meniscus. And then you go to the doctor, and they're like, you have a meniscus tear. But maybe you had that tear 15 years ago, and it was asymptomatic, and now that you have a tight muscle, it's pissed off the joint, and now they're finding this meniscal tear. Go ahead, go get that meniscus surgery. You still got that tight muscle. It's actually worse.
It's going to be tighter now.
Right? Because now you're immobilized.
Scar tissue.
And now you still have the symptom because you didn't actually do all the homework and all the work that it takes in order to get your body in the right position. And then, okay, maybe it is that meniscus tear, but it could be 75 other things as well, right? So, big fan of not being lazy. Do the work, right? Okay, so another treatment that we can do is HSR, right? So heavy, slow resistance is a 12-week long cycle, very, very popular right now. It's been proven to help with tendon issues. Figure out if in fact it is a tendon issue, and then Google HSR cycle. I'm not saying just put yourself on it, although it is a pretty safe cycle, and I put a lot of people on it for positioning and for general tendon strength. I think it's a really, really, really good way to strengthen all the structures around the knee and make sure that your core and everything handles a lot of squatting patterns, deadlifting patterns, things like that. So just Google that, HSR. Big fan
check that out.
Issues. Oh, you about to do it in focus.
Right.
So, big fan of HSR for tendon issues. Okay, so how do we not fuck it up again, right? We figured out, is it fucked up? How to unfuck it up? And then what do we need to do to not fuck it up again now that we have treated the knee?
We got to train the muscles around it. Once we figure out what's overworked or what's tight and weak, then we got to start, we start strengthening it. But most of all, we start to get that mobility. Once we get that mobility and mobilize the muscles and the supporting areas around it, then we start strengthening it, and then we start loading it. Because I realized that people can walk around without pain in their knee, but if you put some load on it, then that whole form and everything falls apart. So we got to be able to load it.
Yes. Like you can't just treat your knee and get it pain-free and then say, screw it, here we go. I'm just going to jump back into everything I was doing before. You have to have that slow re-entry back into sport, and you have to constantly maintain, right? So obviously there was something positional-wise, strength-wise, something that you've been doing all your life that led to knee pain that doesn't just magically go away, right? Like you can think about it and you can work on it and you can spend the 6 weeks, 3 months dealing with the symptom of pain of your knee. But all that shit that was brewing down there before that developed that pain is still there. So making sure that you don't slip back into bad habits is going to be crucial for that knee pain to not reoccur, right? And especially for my high intensity people, my CrossFitters that love to go crazy, if you do not have end range mobility, please do not force your knee into explosive end range squats, i.e. cleans, snatches, high box jumps. Okay, like that is all end range. You're crunching your knee. If you can't bring your heel to your butt and access that deep knee flexion, you're screwing your knee up there, right? Yeah, and so until you have that comfortably, don't then explosively land in a deep knee flexion, right? Maintaining ankle strength, right? Like if you have a history of weak ankles, what do you got to do?
Strengthen them.
Regularly, right? Like just throw it into your warm up 2 or 3 days a week, right? Like when you're in a cycle of rehab, you might be doing it 4, 5, 6 days a week. Then you have to go into maintenance mode, right? Like you can't just not do that anymore. You have to keep throwing it in there. It might not have to be as regularly, but you got to tune it up. You got to keep it in there, right? Like if you need to keep getting adjustments every once in a while, it might not be as frequent, right? Because you want to wean them off of that. But you might need a tune-up every now and then, right?
And following your own stuff to strengthen it in between. Exactly. You got to take care of your own body. I tell people at the end of the day, you're the only one responsible for your health. So if you want to keep there and be lazy with that fucked up knee, it's going to stay the same. We got to do something about it.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Maintaining ankle strength. And then don't let your positioning go to shit when you add high intensity, right? So everybody can do stuff nice and hopefully everybody learns how to do good positioning nice and slow and control their body. But then when we add high intensity or we add a heavier load or we add an explosive movement like an Olympic lift, we can't let everything just crumble under the pressure, right? So that's another thing. I think I made a post about it, was it yesterday, the day before, about training your body to be able to tolerate and maintain positions under high intensity or under heavier load. That is something that you have to learn, that your body has to learn, and something that you have to throw into your training as well. You can't just expect those positions to be there when you're at a higher intensity. You have to train that, and so you have to make sure that you progress to that and throw it into your programming accordingly, so that it's not just 0 to 60, right? Like you have to make sure it's just like a squat cycle, you have to progress in your intensity as well. And then do not mask it with your gear, right? We already talked about that. Those knee sleeves, they gotta go.
They gotta go.
Yes. And then as far as that HSR cycle, that's another good thing. I like to program that in annually, right? Whether you have knee pain or not, whether you have shoulder pain or not, like it's just a really good program to throw in at least annually, so that you maintain and build tendon strength as you're, destroying it with all the other stuff that you're doing.
Right.
Yes. So Arnika, what else can we tell them? Anything else that you want to close in there? Oh, you wanted to talk about range of motion and cars in the knee.
Oh, yes.
This is all you.
So I love knee cars. I actually been doing it for myself because I have some knee issues, but being able to control that, I'm gonna see if I can show you guys in this range. So the whole idea of the knee car is being able to move it. Sometimes we focus so much on flexion and extension in the knee that we don't realize that we do have some rotation as well. And we don't really train that unless you're in a specific sport. And then that's kind of when those PCL, the ACL tears come, because we plant that foot and we rotate and our knee's not used to being in that position. So being able to take your knee in, up, and out is really huge. So taking that knee slow and controlled through every range of motion. So internal, extension, external, and flexion. I like going through that slow and controlled, making sure that we're hitting every corners of that joint, just because we need to get the knee moving. I think a lot of people think that a knee is just made up of this one bone. I think people think the knee is just the patella, but there's 3 bones that come together to create the knee, and we got to make sure that they're working together. So knee cars are one of my favorite things to do. Helps build that mobility and range of motion in the knee.
Absolutely. And I'm thinking just that squatting alone, right? Like, so I'm a huge fan of gripping the floor and making sure that you are slightly externally rotated. You want to grip it and boom, lock yourself into position. If that's not comfortable for your knee, you're going to not want to do that, and then that's just going to start creating a faulty squat pattern, right? Also, that CARS that you were doing, that takes me back to school and a special test on diagnosing or assessing meniscal tears, right? And so that internal or that rotation of the knee, if it's not there, then you're probably putting a lot of stress on those menisci and the inert structures, right? The ligaments, the cartilage, everything like that. And so you need that mobility so that the structures are not so stressed out, right? Like your joints want to move freely. They want to heal. They want to be able to do all the things that you want them to do. You just have to provide the optimal environment for them to be able to do that for you, right? Like your body wants to perform. It does. It's a well-oiled machine. You just gotta do all the tune-ups, and you gotta
you gotta take care of that machine.
Oil. You gotta vacuum that bitch every once in a while, right? Like your body needs some TLC. So yeah, I think the CARS are amazing. I'd like to learn more about those. I think those are wonderful. But yeah, rotation of the knee, hugely important. Lots of times not talked about. Arnika, what else? What's going on? Arnika, plug your program a little bit, please. You got this program, Low Back Resilience.
Oh, yes. So I have a low back program. Thank you, Ty. You're awesome. The doors to the Low Back Resilience program are open. It's a 7-week program that really helps in strengthening your low back, and honestly, just being able to teach people how to take care of themselves. There's so many low back flare-ups that people have multiple times throughout the year, which is not okay. Having a flare-up or muscle spasm is a way of your body saying some shit's going on and we got to change it. So making sure that we take care of the back and also the supporting structures around it, taking care of that core, that hip and upper back. Like we talked about with the knee, we got to check shit above and below. And we're doing that with the back. There's no difference. So this whole program takes you through all these mobility, strength, all of it, control, being able to control. And honestly, when you do have those moments, being able to know what to do to handle your low back, to get it back to doing whatever you want to do.
Yeah. And not just freaking out because you're like, I hurt my back.
Right. And not freaking out and calling me. That's the hugest thing. I have people who are like, oh, I need to call Arnika. And I'm looking at you like, but did you do those exercises that I sent you? Because you don't need me. You need to do something yourself. And this is giving the steps to do that.
And knowledge is power. And one of the best things that you can do for your low back is just chill out. Right.
Right.
So freaking out about the fact that you just hurt your back does your back no good, right? So if you do have this knowledge and you can fall back on this program and be like, actually, I know exactly what needs to be done. You're already telling your body, great, we get to chill out. We get to relax because we got this, which is hugely important, especially with the back, dude. That spasm starts setting in and you're going to be fucked unless you know how to handle it. So yeah, great. All right, so this week we went over the knee. Last week went over the ankle. That is in my profile if you need it. And then next week we are going to travel up to the hip. We're going to hopefully we can get it done in one. It might need to be a two-parter.
It's a lot of shit in the hip. Like a lot of shit in the hip.
A lot of shit gets fucked up in the hip.
Right.
Yeah, so it might be a 2-part series. We're going to have to jam on that. But please tell all your friends. This is going to be a weekly series. We're going to be back to Wednesday, I think, next week.
Yep.
And then we're going to travel all the way up the body. We're going to try to cover everything. If you have any questions, please shoot them over to either me or Arnika at Resilient Spine. We do want to answer your questions. We are here. We'll create other posts. We'll answer you in the DMs. We are here to help. I want to make sure that you guys are moving well, you're moving healthy, and you are staying pain-free, or at least on your way to pain-free, because the goal is about training for longevity, right? It's not about what you can do now, it's what you can do later, and how you can be healthy and happy outside the gym. So have a wonderful day, everybody. Thank you, Arnika. Enjoy that beach time.
Thank you,
Ty. See you next week. Bye.
Next week. Bye, y'all.